We are now live.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I will call this open session of Lambton County Council, October the 7th, to order. And we would start off with a moment of silent reflection, remembering those that have dealt with COVID for the last 7 months. Thank you, everyone. Item number 6 is a rise and report. We did have an in-camera session held at 9 a.m. this morning. Is there any things to rise and report? Stefan?
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much. There are 2 matters to report on. The first matter is that County Council provided instructions to staff in regards to a proposed collective agreement between the county and the Ontario Nurses Association. And secondly, the County Council adopted its in-camera minutes of its session on September 2nd. Those are the matters I have to report on.
Thank you. Item number 7 is our update from our Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Ranaday, and I'll shout out the good news. So we are at 0 active cases in Lambton County now, and that goes to all the good hard work by our Lambton Public Health and the residents of the County of Lambton for following the guidelines and doing whatever we can to look after each other. I know that this is a moment in time, and we can certainly go back, and certainly our numbers can and possibly will go back up, but it's a good day for us today and all the hard work that everyone has done. So I will turn it over to Dr. Ranaday to fill us in on where we are and where we're going.
Great. Thank you, Warden. Oh, hang on. How about that?
That is better. Thank you.
Okay, great. Yep. So if you will permit me to share my screen with you. Uh-oh. Hang on one second. We need to just get this. Okay, if there's a way that we can get somebody to let me share the screen. Oh, thank you. Okay, here we go. Okay, so please let me know if you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So, maybe a longer update than usual. There's a lot going on, so I'd like to make sure that you kind of have an overview of what's happening everywhere. So here's what's going on in Ontario, right? We're seeing increasing cases across the province. The caseloads are now at about 500 or more cases per day. They are largely centered in Toronto, Peel, and Ottawa, but as we know, travel patterns between those areas and our area dictate what we call the importation of cases from those places through social networks and gatherings, right? But in response, you're also seeing increasing restrictions across the province. So there are gathering limit reductions of 10 indoors, 25 outdoors, changes to restaurant and bar hours, and that's something that you're seeing in many other places around the world where there are spikes in COVID cases, as well as a new mandate from the province around face coverings in indoor public settings where physical distance cannot be maintained. I think what we're seeing again, and I've talked about this before, it's just important to go back to this, is that the key here is that it's a balancing act between benefits and harms. And we know that an indefinite lockdown is unsustainable and damaging, but that would be the thing that would drive case rates to 0 and mortality and health system risk to 0. But unrestricted freedom, of course, then risks that greater mortality and an overwhelmed health system. So everybody around the world, including us, including Ontario, including Canada, is trying to find the right balance of optimizing the benefits of social behavior while optimizing or minimizing the harms of that behavior from COVID. And I think you might remember months ago, I said to you, we would be in a very uncomfortable situation where the balance is actually a situation that makes nobody happy, because the people who want zero risk are going to be unhappy with anything that opens up a little bit of risk, and people who want to be able to do whatever they want are going to be unhappy with anything that restricts what they get to do. So that's the place that we find ourselves in now. And in some ways, if everybody's unhappy, you almost know that you're doing you're closer towards finding a balance. In the last week or so, we've received updated guidance on a lot of public health management topics from the province. So a revised outbreak management guidance for schools. The Ministry of Education released a new revised symptom screening list for schools, which has the benefit of being much more feasible in terms of the range of symptoms that are now screened for. But having said that, has the potential for picking up cases of mild disease. There are changes to the testing eligibility criteria, a real focus on symptomatic testing of symptomatic individuals, and limiting the testing of asymptomatic individuals to people who meet certain eligibility criteria. And three, and multiple different streams or ways of being able to get tested. Changes to the assessment center protocols around moving towards an appointment-based system rather than a walk-in model, which largely makes sense given that we're moving into a time period where it's going to get colder, it's going to be harder for people to wait outside. So demand management kind of becomes key. As well as updated guidance on how we clear cases. So this is very important. We used to clear a case after 14 days. The updated guidance allows us to clear mild to moderate cases of disease after 10 days, but severe diseases are cleared after 20 days. And so severe diseases would be anyone with severe indicators of disease, hospitalization, ICU admission, etc. It's important to remember, though, that when we're doing contact tracing, the contact isolation period remains 14 days. So we're dealing with a little bit of, there's all of these different thresholds, but we'll manage that. But I just wanted to give you an update on what that means. So people will be cleared with disease faster, which is in line with the science. But again, there are going to be a few with lingering effects that we don't believe are still infectious, which is why they're able to be cleared after 10 days and more. Just to say that there's been a lot of updated guidance on lots of different things, and every time we get it, we look at it, we try to package it appropriately for the audience, and then push it back out. If we can just refer to the guidance from the province, we try to do that, but sometimes more detail is required or additional steps related to Lambton County. Our local trends, as you see way back in April, this diagram goes all the way back there. It's a screenshot from our website, but you can see September and October, our rates have been very, very steady. So I characterize this as grumbling, right? That there is still a low prevalence of disease in the community, either through importation or through, or through some activity that we're not aware of, but really low level of cases. And I think that is, as the warden said, in large part due to people taking this seriously, in large part due to people restricting or minimizing their social behavior, and being more aware of what's going on in general. But having said that, right, I think that it's important to pay attention to what's happening in Toronto and Peel and Ottawa, because that's how the first peak or wave of this started, right? Where we had some cases out here in March that were happening in the GTA, and then over time we were seeing them, and so we would expect some kind of rise in our cases as well due to travel patterns. The local situation, so again, right, we have a stable caseload with 1 to 2 cases at any given time. It's well within our current capacity to perform case and contact management. In terms of planning for the fall and second waves, we're actively working with the education sector, the healthcare sector with respect to COVID as well as influenza, and the social services sector to ensure that people have access to services that they need. Provincially, you're seeing some capacity issues where some health units have now reprioritized elements of their contact tracing programs and are focusing more on case isolation and identification. Of course, that's a big concern to us in general in the field, because it's one of the big tools that we have in order to manage the spread of disease. So, there's lots of discussion around how those health units could be supported to do more contact tracing, et cetera. And lab testing capacity continues to be a concern because it is essentially fixed. It takes a long time to grow, and it depends on the fluctuating demand. So you're seeing some efforts to manage the demand to enable greater control over the testing timelines and capacity. And finally, I just want to give you a little update on things that we've been doing with schools. Our school work really focuses on 3 pillars. So there's infection prevention and control support. And so we have been conducting visits to school premises for infection prevention and control support to answer their questions, to run through checklists, to help them with troubleshooting on site. We have an ongoing connection with school board leadership, and we've been working a lot to help develop resources for schools and parents, and working closely with Chatham-Kent Public Health Unit because we share a few boards in common. With respect to student testing, Lambton Public Health has set up 3 testing centres for symptomatic students who have been excluded from school. I think this is a bit of a novel approach to enable the prioritization of access to testing, as well as recognizing that the benefits of testing one student are actually multiple. There are multiple public health reasons to do that test. Of course, the test processing remains subject to the lab capacity that's fixed and available in the province because we are sending those tests to the same labs. And in terms of outbreak identification and management, we've built collaborative processes with both the school boards and Chatham-Kent Health Unit. And we also have a Southwest Region Medical Officer of Health consensus statement to address some particulars that were not addressed in the outbreak management guidelines. For example, what should we do about buses? And to what extent do we isolate children on school buses? And so we've come to some consensus agreements around things like that in advance to help us work through those issues as needed. So not to say that any of these activities will necessarily prevent an outbreak in schools, but I think that they will help us be more prepared to address outbreaks should we identify them with schools. And so what can we anticipate moving forward? I think we can anticipate the potential for increasing restrictions as cases rise across the province, as well as renewed attention to the harms associated with those restrictions. I think we can also expect to see some recommendations from the province around protecting vulnerable or at-risk populations. For example, people who are 70 and older, people with specific chronic diseases. And I hope that those recommendations will be guided by our accumulated knowledge of the relative disease transmission risks, right? What we know of to be high-risk activities, what we know of to be low-risk activities. So we're told that we can expect some guidance around that as well. So those are just some things to anticipate. And I think before I close, I don't have much more to add except to say, you know, in addition to the thanks to Lambton Public Health staff, as well as to the community for really pulling together on this, I do want to thank all of you folks. I imagine that at the best of times, being an elected representative is a challenging position and role, and these are not the best of times. And so I imagine that it's even more so challenging. So thank you for what you're doing with your municipalities and also collectively as a county to help respond to COVID. So I will close my remarks there. Stop screen sharing. I hope that that works. So you should be able to see the regular screen again.
Yep, we're all back.
Thank you.
Thank you for that update, Dr. Ranade. Any questions this morning for Dr. Ranade? Mayor Bradley.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I am informed that there is a COVID patient at Blue Water Health as of this morning. So the numbers are always a roller coaster ride, as you know. And I understand the individual is not from the community. I don't know what that means, if it's connected to the SHIP case or not. But that's not my question. I'm really interested, you know, just looking back over the 6 or 7 months, does Lambton County Public Health have a pandemic master plan? And if so, is it a public document the public can see? I understand it's in place, that many other places have a master plan to deal with the pandemic. So I guess my question is, do we have one? And if so, can it be made public?
Sure. So I can take that question back to our administrative staff. I know that we have a plan that has been amended. So if I go back post, if I recall correctly, I think it was post SARS that everybody was supposed to build pandemic post SARS and post H1N1, agencies were supposed to build pandemic influenza plans. So what I believe our plan is a version of the pandemic influenza plan that has been adapted to the fact that many of the parameters or interventions that we believed that we would have in an influenza pandemic, we do not currently have. So the pandemic influenza plan focuses a lot on the distribution of antivirals to vulnerable populations, but we don't really have that for COVID. It focuses on the vaccination of individuals, and we don't have that yet. So it's the other pieces. So I can take that back to our group to come back to you with.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Bird. You're on, microphone is muted. You're still on mute, Councillor Burt. There you go.
Something's happening this end because I'd already clicked on it. Thank you. Good morning, Dr. Renaday. Thank you for the presentation. On the last slide, where you say that talking about the harms associated with the COVID measures or restrictions, you say that more attention or additional attention will be brought to these restrictions and you know what they're causing. Can you give us some idea of what you will do, what form these extra attentions will take?
Oh, sorry. When I say renewed attention, I mean renewed public discussion. So I think what's going to happen is as you see more and more restrictions, you'll see more stories and sort of public attention around the harms and consequences of restrictions themselves. So be they social consequences, health consequences, or economic consequences. That's what I was referring to. Not specifically that we have that there are interventions related to that we have, but just that there'll be more discussion around both the sort of restriction and what harms those restrictions cause, as well as the potential benefits in terms of mitigating COVID.
Well, thank you, because the one thing I was really concerned about when I read articles in the paper from the Canadian Mental Health Association, you know, that their demands have gone up at least 30% with all the kinds of mental health issues and addictions and things like that. So that really concerns me.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Rombout.
Thank you, Warden Weber. Contact tracing is said to be a key piece in keeping this illness under control. There are reports showing fatigue within the public health units in regions like Ottawa, Peel, and Toronto. I'm wondering, can our health unit offer services to assist these regions who are seeing a higher prevalence of positive cases?
Thank you, Councillor. It's a good question. So we have actually been able to do that in the past. And so, for example, when Windsor was seeing a high rate of cases, we were able to redeploy some of our staff to assist with their case and contact management. And so we can look at that. There are ongoing discussions. And really, we leave it to those health units to reach out for help. And when they do that, then we can offer the kinds of help that they need. So essentially, we're still waiting for them to say to the field, we need you to come and help us. So we can offer it, but we need to know exactly what help they're seeking. So some of the health units had sought help that was really on-site help that required people to move there and work there for a few weeks, and that was something that became harder to do. The stuff that's remote that we can offer is easier for us to do, and so we can certainly put that out to them and say that we're able to offer some support while we don't have a lot of case and contact management activities.
Thank you. I think I've just heard a lot of reports coming from the Toronto region where they're almost limiting the number of contact tracings and asking people to do the contact tracing themselves. And if we could do it over Zoom with our trained people, it might help in trying to get this under control.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hand.
My question relates to the provincial masking bylaw. I haven't seen any information on that. The reason I'm asking is we have a bylaw within our own community that was, you know, specific to our area. I've been asked if we should cancel that one and go on the Ontario provincial one, and I'm saying don't even have any details on that, and I don't see any reason to do that. I think we should leave in place what we already did for our own community, but I'm curious, you know, they made the announcement with no particulars.
So I can advise that the details have just come out. So the regulation has just recently been updated online. But I think in terms of how that connects to your municipal bylaws, I would prefer to refer that question potentially through the warden to Mr. Tifo.
Okay, Stefan?
Yes, thank you. No, it's a good question and one that was reasonably anticipated. As Dr. Renaday noted, the regulations were amended on Monday afternoon, And to keep it short, effectively the provincial requirements for face coverings, I would say, match what I've seen in terms of the bylaws out of Point Edward, Sarnia, Petrolia, and Lambton Shores. To some degree, there's age differences and whatnot in terms of face coverings. So given that there are those differences, but globally, I think the requirement is fairly consistent. With respect to the differences, where you can comply with both, then from a legal perspective, both pieces of legislation, the bylaw and of course the orders under the issued by the province, can coexist. Then where I think the legislation, both bylaw and orders, can coexist, then it becomes more of what I would call a business consideration as to whether or not you wish to suspend, for instance, your own bylaws from your own municipalities. And when I think about business consideration, I think about stuff like time, resources, personnel required to enforce your bylaws. And then finally, in terms of the enforcement aspect of things, I would venture to say that the provincial orders are a little bit easier for enforcement officers, including police, to enforce on the street, simply because they'll likely be in a position to issue tickets. What I would say are ticketable offense, where under your bylaws, I'm not aware of any one of you having short form wording, and therefore, if you don't have short form wording under your bylaws, it's really not a ticketable offense, and therefore you have to go through what I would call a more difficult process to enforce. So again, really those 4 points. The regulations from the province were released on Monday, late afternoon. Secondly, from a large general perspective, face coverings are face coverings. They're consistent, save and except for age differences, little minor pieces. Thirdly, from my review of all your bylaws, those of you who have adopted bylaws and the provincial regulations or the provincial order, they can coexist in my view. And then fourthly, whether or not you wish them to coexist in your own municipalities really depends on the business considerations that underlie your enforcement of your bylaws.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Bradley?
Follow-up question, Mr. Tebow. The understanding that we were getting at the emergency prior to COVID from Sarnia was that the provincial regulation overruled our bylaws. No different than, and I realize it's new and it's confusing, overruled our bylaw just as it did with smoking in public place bylaw. It replaced it. And I also understand that the order may be indefinite. It's not, there's an emergency order, but it may be indefinite on the face masking. But we were taking it, and I'll give you just one example, is that our bylaw, I'm sure Mayor Hands may have the same thing, it dealt with churches and how you could operate within churches. And it's pretty standard. I believe we took it from some other place. But my understanding of the provincial regulations, there's nothing in there on churches, nothing at all. And so we believe the provincial bylaw is overrunning. And I'm not a lawyer, so I can't speak to all of that. But that's what we were getting back. And I realize it's confusing and there's different interpretations. But I thought it was just like the public smoking. Their bylaw now is the law across the province.
Nope, that's a good question. You're correct. The bylaw, the provincial order is the law across the province. But I'll maintain my position that bylaws and the provincial order can coexist. There's nothing in black and white that says one trumps the other. They can coexist. If there's going to be any inconsistency between a bylaw and a provincial order where an individual cannot comply with both, then I would say that the provincial order, the provincial rules would govern in those circumstances. So again, those are limited circumstances where one individual cannot comply with both, right? Where they can comply with both, where the compliance with one will not result in the breach of the other, they can coexist. And then finally, I think your question was with respect to churches. You're right. Some of the bylaws that I've seen, at least locally and provincially, do specifically enumerate churches as enclosed public places. In my mind, the way that I interpret a provincial law, and there's Court of Appeal support on this, that addresses public health and safety, the provincial law will be interpreted in a large and liberal manner so to ensure that it achieves its purpose. And when the provincial order speaks to organizations and businesses, I would interpret organizations to include churches to the extent that the church invites members of the public within their services. So that's my response on those.
I just follow up on that, and I respect your opinion. I think it would be wise for us to ask the two MPPs to clarify these issues for all of Lambton County, so we're not enforcing something we shouldn't be, and that we understand whose law is leading this. I just think it'd be helpful, because even on this call, there's confusion, as there is with Thanksgiving weekend and some of these other issues they've been announcing without much consultation or no consultation at all.
Yeah, I think the practical solution to the issue without investing in $1 million question is oftentimes to take a look at the sort of the business considerations, that fourth element that I spoke of earlier, in terms of what your municipality is doing proactively to enforce its bylaw versus the provincial orders that are, in my mind, can be much more easily enforced on the streets by enforcement officers. Bylaws that I'm aware of within Lambton County, you have to process enforcement through a Part 3, which is a bit of a administratively more difficult process than enforcing the orders.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hand?
I just have one last question, and then I'll go and read up what they're talking about. But I haven't read what came out on Monday. I wasn't aware that it was out. But what I had heard was their age limit was going to be 2. And for example, in our bylaw, it's 9. I think it's 9 in Petrolia as well. So is this saying that we're going to have to adapt to 2-year-olds and up wearing masks, or are we okay with the 9 that we already instituted? I am confused.
Good question, and that's a classic, let's call it an example. And in Lambton County, pursuant to the provincial order, face coverings are required for those above the age of 2, despite what your bylaws stipulate on minimum age requirements. That's not to say that your bylaw is unenforceable on that, because of course, if you comply with the provincial rules, you're complying with your own bylaws. The only time that your bylaw would be quashed on the concept of sort of, let's call it supremacy, for lack of a better word, in terms of the government relations, is where compliance with one equals violation on the other. Okay.
Councillor Rumbold?
Yes, and follow up to the enforcement, and this is probably for Stefan as well. I'm wondering, is there not exceptions to the provincial bylaw or the provincial mandate for people who have health issues preventing them from wearing a mask? And if so, then how can you enforce it?
No, that's a very good question. And in terms of, again, the general sort of regulatory framework of the provincial rules, the provincial order, and the way that bylaws have been crafted, including with respect to those individuals who are exempt from wearing it, are quite similar, if not identical, to how bylaws have been structured. So for instance, if an individual cannot wear a face covering on account of a disability or medical condition, or without having to have assistance to place in or remove the face covering, then there is an exemption in the provincial order. So the message that I guess that I wish to leave you folks with is that from a high level, what you see in the provincial order effectively echoes what I've seen in bylaws. Save and except that in the provincial order, as opposed to some bylaws out there, the provincial order applies to individuals. It says an individual shall wear, whereas some bylaws out there will impose the duty on business operators to adopt a policy and enforce a policy for face coverings in open or publicly accessible indoor spaces. That's essentially what I would say is the main sort of policy difference between the province and some of the bylaws throughout Ontario. But for the most part, I think from Lambton County's perspective, save and except for the age issue, ultimately, if you're complying, if you're used to our local bylaws, you'd be essentially complying with the provincial orders.
Okay. Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Warden Weber, members of County Council. There was a question asked about a county pandemic plan, and the county does have a pandemic plan, and it's been in place for a number of years. And it starts out, it speaks about the influenza piece, and it talks pandemic influenza hazard plan, and it refers to a number of the pandemics over the last number of years. St. Clair Township took that document, and we revised our document back in March. Well, actually, we did the work in February. I couldn't find the county one online here this morning after the question was asked, but I could find ours. It's a 60-page document. And my assumption was from our, excuse me, our fire chief was that that was the basis of how the county control group was functioning. So anyways, there is one there. I assume every municipality in the county has that as an addendum to their emergency action plans.
Thank you for that. I was fairly confident that we did have a plan. I just wasn't available here to put it out there. So we will get our plan that we have in our emergency plan, as Mayor Bradley has asked, and have it for circulation. Any other questions for Dr. Renaday before we let him get on with his day? Seeing no hands being raised or squares turning green or yellow, whatever color that is, that when they light up when they talk, I would say thank you, Dr. Renaday, and keep up the good work. We're doing a good job here with all the residents, as I said before, participating and doing what they should. So see you again soon. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And item number 8, we have one delegation this morning, Mr. Sandy Marshall, Executive Director from Bioindustrial Innovation Canada, an update on activities of BIC. And when we get him signed on, I'm sure he'll share his screen and we have a presentation. So welcome, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you, Warden Weaver, and thank you to the council for allowing me to speak. I'm going to try and host disabled participant screen sharing. So I'll need someone to allow me to screen share.
Yeah, we're working on that.
There. Is that coming up on everybody's screen okay? Very good. Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity to come and speak to County Council again and update you on some of the activities that have been going on at BIC. It's been 18 months since I last was here, and there's been quite a bit that's happened in the last 18 months. And so today I'm going to focus on updating you on some of the noteworthy changes that we've had. I have provided some backup slides here. These, for those of you who have been on the council for my previous presentations, you will see these, you recognize these slides. I'm not going to go through them specifically at this point, but if anyone has any questions about these, please feel free to ask, and I can clarify it as we get into the question and answer period. So today I'm going to focus mostly on BIC's activities around cluster building. That is the area which is most relevant, I think, to us in Lambton County. And I think I'd like to start here because I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about our partners, our cluster development partners we have here working with us in the Sarnia Lambton Hybrid Chemistry Cluster. These groups are well known to all of you, but I think it's important that everyone recognize and be reminded that these groups are instrumental to the economic development activities that we're carrying on here. The Sarnia Lambton Economic Partnership clearly has a leadership role here, connecting locally. The Sarnia Lambton Research Park is providing the assets and providing the space for business incubation to occur here in Sarnia Lambton. and there's a lot of activity going on there. Lambton College has been continues to expand and provide more and more applied research capability, and along with that research capability comes along the development of a lot of highly qualified personnel that are being developed and put out into our community to support economic development here. Of course, we're involved with this as a business accelerator, and then of course we would not be able to scale these opportunities if we didn't have some of the access to the industrial parks here. Particularly noteworthy are the Blue Water Energy Park and the Bioindustrial Park Sarnia that are located in the valley here, managed by TransAlta and Erlangsia. So when we get into, we've received some new funding since I was here 2 years ago. The first here is our Bioproducts Ag Sci Cluster. This is the second round of this funding that we've received from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, and it will be running from the period of 2018 through 2023. It's $12 million of funding that's used to support R&D projects on bioproducts. This is a national program, so there are some local components to this, but it's more of a national program. I would like to focus more on the second funding here, which is the Ontario Bioindustrial Innovation Network. This is a carry-on from our previous funding that we had from FedDev Ontario, and the total project is over $52 million of total spend, and this project started in March of 2019 and runs for 5 years through to 2024. With this comes $15 million of funding from FedDev Ontario that is provided to BIC to carry out our activities. BIC, our industry partners, and the clients that we work with are providing a matching funding of over $37 million to go against the $15 million that is here from the federal government. Unfortunately, if you'll note here, one difference from our last round of funding, unfortunately, there is no longer any financial support coming from the province of Ontario. And for us to be able to continue to move forward with this latest round of funding with FedDev Ontario, Bioindustrial Innovation Canada had to come forward with more internal funds from themselves. And this additional requirement of funding from BIC internally has put some additional financial strain on BIC and may impact our longer term sustainability. But for us, it was very critical that we get this funding from FedDev Ontario so we could carry on our activities. So we filled in that gap that the province had left. So basically, the $52 million is being spent in two ways. $30 million is going into investments with startup companies. Part of that funding is coming from FedDev, part from BIC, and also another part is coming from venture capital and external equity investment groups that we are partnering with as well across Canada and around the world. The second 22 million of this is used for commercialization support activities, and this is particularly focused on cluster development and continuing to do cluster development work here in Sarnia Lambton. Part of this initiative was to expand and work with our communities in Eastern Ontario to build out a second cluster. And we're particularly working with the region of Leeds-Grenville, centered in around Brockville and Maitland. There is a chemical cluster up in Maitland, which is smaller, but similar in nature to the one we have here in Sarnia Lambton, so it's a great fit for us. So we're continuing to do ComSci investments and projects to help companies remove barriers to commercialization. And this is a great opportunity for us to continue to work with you, the county, and the various partners we have here in the county to progress economic development here. So during the last funding cycle, the County of Lambton was very helpful in providing BIC with two sources of funding. The first was $2.5 million loan that we used to match against FedDev investment or FedDev dollars to do investments in early stage companies. And there was also a further $500,000 that came from the county to invest in 3 companies. These 3 companies noted here: Origin, Benefuel, and Comet Bio. These 3 companies continue to. So these 3 companies were very active in the Sarnia Lambton Hybrid Chemistry Cluster. As you can see here, I've got a little bit of summary of where they're at. Origin has partially constructed their plant at the Erlanxio site, but they've put that development on hold pending financing. Benefuel is a biofuels company that was looking to build a plant at the Erlanxio site. They are continuing to work on those plans. They have a second facility that they have in the US that they're trying to also develop, but they've also are having challenges getting additional financing. And the third project here is Comet Bio, who was looking to build a sugars facility at the TransAlta site. And basically, this company was not able to fully obtain the funding they needed to complete the construction of their plant. And so they have now pivoted away to more lower volume, high margin, soluble fiber applications for human consumption. I think the common issue here through these early stage companies is the challenges to obtain equity and debt financing that allows these companies to scale. And this continues to be a challenge. And I will say that it's probably the biggest challenge that, or the biggest issue we've seen coming through COVID is that access to capital for early stage companies, pre-revenue companies is very, very difficult to obtain. Moving forward here, BIC has a number of significant projects locally that we are funding and supporting with our most recent funding through FedDev Ontario. I've shown 4 of them here, and I'll go through them a little bit so you get a sense of some of the activities that are going on. Woodland Biofuels is not a new name for us here in Lambton County. They've had their pilot plant at the Sarnia Lambton Research Park now for probably 10 years. They continue to operate that pilot plant, and they're collecting some final data. We're working with them very specifically to help them engineer their first commercial plant. They are looking to build this plant at the Erlanxio site and are in discussions with Erlanxio. And so we're working with them to try and get this engineering progressed so that this first commercial plant can be built at the Erlanxio site. Second project, we're working with LCY Biosciences. Some may not recognize that name. LCY Biosciences bought the BioAmber plant out of receivership, and they have restarted that facility that's located at the Erlanxio site. They've started up and have been producing succinic acid and marketing that to customers around the world. LCY Biosciences has some very significant plans to expand the product portfolio of that facility, and we're working with them now to help them design and engineer and construct a demonstration line for the production of some specialty fermentation products. I use the term carotenoids here, and because that's what the first project is focused on. Forward Water has been with us for some time. They've relocated their operations from Toronto, from the Xerox Research Park in Sheridan Park to Sarnia. They have set up their offices and their labs and pilot plant at the research park. We continue to support them to develop market applications and to grow their business. And so this has been a great partnership between us, Lambton College, and the research park, all 3 of us supporting Forward Water and their growth here in Sarnia Lambton. The last project that we're working on that I'm going to mention today is a company called Imtex Membranes. They have a very interesting membrane technology that will replace or can replace some of the traditional high energy technologies that are used in the petrochemical industry. Imtex is in the early stages of constructing their demonstration plant at the Erlanxio site. They are in detailed engineering. They have a bit of a project engineering team that's being put together, and they're working forward on that. So these are 4 of the projects we have right now that are very active, and we're supporting along with our partners. I also wanted to mention this, that BSE is also working closely with these partners within the cluster to develop a project to build an anaerobic digestion system here. We've been having discussions with WESIC, and certainly this is a group that's well known in Sarnia Lambton. And we believe that WESIC can be a really solid and key industrial partner to help this potential project get off the ground. They have some very aggressive plans on growth across Ontario, and one of those opportunities can sit here in Sarnia Lambton. In essence, this is a bit of a rework of a model that I presented to you, I believe, two times ago. It's really an owner-operator model to build an anaerobic digester. The feedstocks that can go into this anaerobic digester is industrial biotech rich waste streams that would come from companies like LCY Biosciences. There's also opportunities for source separated organics, green bin materials. I know there's issues coming up over the next few years on diversion from landfill, and this could be a great solution for a local solution for that. And there's also opportunities to use agricultural materials in these in this anaerobic digester, things like agricultural residues and animal manure, which and there is a working model out in British Columbia that is doing this today that could be applied here. So right now there is no specific project that's defined, but we're working collectively to try and define one and to get this off the ground locally. The products produced here would be renewable natural gas. There's also potential to produce hydrogen, which can be used in hydrogen fuel cells or various other things such as mass transport buses and these sorts of things. So there is some opportunities to maybe look at a hydrogen system within the Sarnia Lambton region if this were to develop. Again, conceptual, too early to get too excited about it, but I wanted to introduce this here. Obviously, the digestate from from the anaerobic digester, as long as it is clean and good, it can be used as a fertilizer material for agricultural lands or used for other feedstocks to produce different materials. And of course, this project would be tied into the Erlangsia wastewater treatment plant to make sure that any wastewater from this facility is treated properly before it goes into the environment. So what's in store for the next 5 years or 4 years? We have basically 3.5 years left on our FedDev project. It is execution of that project is our #1 priority. With that comes the continued support of the Sarnia Lambton cluster and working with our partners in Eastern Ontario to build out their cluster. And this will be accomplished through investments and projects leveraging the funding that comes from FedDev and our partners. As we work together now for the last number of years, and I see this continuing, some of the other priorities that are showing up for us at BIC are things like circular economy initiatives. There is a lot of work going on right now around mixed plastics or chemical recycling of mixed plastics, and the opportunity out there to take mixed plastics and convert them to fuels and chemicals through thermal conversion technologies, which may actually be able to be reintegrated back into the existing petrochemical infrastructure we have here in Sarnia. I think it's a very unique opportunity for us here in Sarnia Lambton, and we're trying to find ways and opportunities to link these together and build these projects. And of course, I've talked a little bit about organics to renewable natural gas or hydrogen through anaerobic digestion and working on that project. And then the final piece here is we are really working hard to build financial sustainability for Bioindustrial Innovation Canada. We can only achieve financial sustainability if we can get ourselves away from the need for government funding on an ongoing basis. This can be achieved by supporting our investment companies to develop and scale. As we make our investment companies successful, we then have the opportunity to get exits from those companies, and those returns from those exits can be used for reinvestment back into companies into the future, and also be used to provide the base operational funding that BIC would need long term. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention here at the close that we have the county loan still moving forward. We are making our payments on it at an ongoing basis. There is a balloon payment sitting in March of 2023, and we are looking to see our investments exit so that we will be able to repay that balloon payment at the end appropriately. With that, I thank you and take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Are there any questions from any members of council? I'm not seeing any hands up. Must have been well explained, and things are going along good. So
I have a question, Bill.
oh, sorry, Lonnie. Mayor Napper, Councillor Napper, go ahead.
Yeah, I should know this. Where is this Alexander site?
I'm sorry.
You refer to the Arlancio
Site.
Yes.
Arlancio is there's been a long list of names, but it basically started with Polysar. So it went from Polysar, then it became the Bayer Rubber site. And then after Bayer Rubber, it moved over to Lanxess. And then after Lanxess, there was a joint venture with Savic, and it became Arlancio. So it is on Vital Street, basically between Imperial Oil and the TransAlta site, previously Dow site.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Mr. Marshall?
No, I want to thank you very much for your continued support. We could not be achieving what we're doing without the support of council and the partner organizations that you support. So again, thank you very much, and I look forward to providing you more positive updates in the future.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Move along to item number 9, which is our minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes from September the 2nd and our special meeting of council September the 16th. Could I have a mover for both of those sets of minutes, please? Councillor Hand and Councillor Miller. Any questions on those minutes? Seeing no questions, all in favor of those minutes being adopted? That is carried. Thank you. Item 10 is correspondence. We have one item of correspondence from AMO to be received and filed. A mover to receive that, Councillor Rumbouts, and second by Councillor Cook. Any questions regarding that correspondence? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. I have information reports regarding the county official plan update. Item number 11. And there's a report there for our information. Any questions regarding that? Could I have a mover to receive that for our information? Councillor White, second by Deputy Warden Marriott. Seeing no questions, all in favor of receiving that? That's carried. Thank you. A lot of work went into getting that through the process. An item, Creative County Committee minutes. That we received these minutes. This was from a while ago that we had these in our second meeting. Mover by Councillor Broad. And you have a question as well, you're on mute. Mover and seconder to receive this, seconded by Councillor Bird. And Councillor Broad, you had a question.
Yes, thanks, Warden Weber. I guess I'm a little puzzled there. If we go down to our next section there in 13, our treasurer has reported that we should be maybe holding off on the grant program for 2021, and yet the Creative County
grant program is going to move forward for 2021. If somebody on the committee could kind of just inform me, I read the minutes, just inform me what the thought process was there, because now we have one arm of the county saying we need to cut back on the grants. We got the other one continuing to hand them out. That'd be much appreciated. Thanks, Bill.
Councillor Rumbouts, who is the chair of the committee, can speak to that.
Thank you, Warden Weaver. Yes, the committee felt that creativity was in dire need right now, and that the hope was that if the grant continued, that people would become more creative in how they would share their creativity. And the grant was cut in half for the next year, so there was a compromise there.
I think just to clarification, I don't believe the county creative grant is for capital. And I believe the report from the item 13 is capital grants, and it's receiving new capital grants. So it would be like the hospital grants that we provide capital for. So I think that's the difference. And if our treasurer would like to clarify that, that would be great.
Yeah. Through Warden Weaver, that's correct. Basically, what we're trying to relay to the community is that we're definitely going to, cost containment mode with our 2021 budget, and these are basically the new operating grants that we may be getting during the course of the year, and just holding a pause on some of our potential costs going forward. So it's just an early indication moving into 2021. But all the existing grants that are out there would be continued to be honored.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Berg, your question?
Thank you, Warden Weaver. I'd just like to ask staff, with the changes that are being made, which I understand to the Creative County Grant funding, is the November 26th annual grant review meeting still going to take place? Is that still on schedule?
Mr. Meyer?
Through you, Warden. Thank you for the question, Councillor Berg. Yes, so the current grant intake period closes on November 16th, and it's the intent of the committee to reconvene in late November to review the applications based on the reduced funding available, as Councillor Roberts mentioned.
I'm sorry, Mr. Meyer, what did you say was the closing date?
Through you, Warden, the closing date for the Creative County Grant Program is November 16th, Monday, November 16th at 4 p.m.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. So I have a mover and a seconder to have that received for information. And further questions? Councillor Bird? Councillor Ferguson? I guess I had Councillor Broad and Councillor Bird is moving and seconding that.
Yeah.
We had the discussion.
Yeah.
That's okay. All in favor of receiving that? That's carried. Thank you. And item 13, 2021 new capital grant request. And there is a motion that the county capital grant program be suspended for 21 so that no new capital grant requests be entertained in the budget. Is there a mover and a seconder? Councillor White and Councillor Cook. Questions regarding that? Councillor Bradley. You're on mute, sir.
I recall Blue Water Health applied last year. And if I recall, I moved the motion to table it for more information and for staff to work with them to come back to this budget. Did that happen? And is that request still outstanding from Blue Water Health that was delayed from last year, from the foundation?
Thank you for the question. Definitely that request is still outstanding given what we basically received 2 weeks after the budget got approved. the last 7 months that we've been incurring with respect to COVID. So there has been really no action taken since that time because our financial picture has definitely changed. And there's a lot of uncertainty moving into 2021 for a whole variety of programs. So basically, this was an introductory report trying to basically put county council on notice if this is something that they would like to do moving forward into 2021, because there are significant cost pressures outside the grant process that need to be considered as well. But welcome any questions on the issue.
Okay. Any other questions or comments regarding this recommendation? Councilor Bradley.
Yeah. So why wouldn't we see this as part of a total picture? I recall bringing up the issue of opening the budget this year, and that was rejected. So why wouldn't we see that as part of the overall budget process on the capital grant side, but also on the operating side? It seems to me that they're all linked together. But wouldn't it be better to look at the whole package instead of just specifically saying on this one right now that we're not doing it, and we may decide not to do it? But it seems to me you need the operating side and to see those pressures at the same time, which is what the budget process is all about.
Go ahead, sir.
Again, through Warren Weaver, it's council's wish as to how they want to proceed with the grants. I think whether it be operating or capital, but again, I just want to give everyone early notice about basically 2021 isn't going to be an easy budget year, and there are some communities that basically have basically put a moratorium on capital grants given the uncertainty that we're facing in 2021. I just want to basically have unrealistic expectations as to there's big sufficient amount of funding that's available within the county. I do respect the process, and that was so it's definitely county council's wishes as how they like to proceed. But a 1-year moratorium on county grants is just one of the cost containment initiatives that we were taking a look at in order to contain costs within the county.
Okay, thank you. I think clarity on this is it's no new capital grant requests. So the grants that we have been contributing to in the past are still, we're going to maintain those, but the new ones that we're saying we're putting on hold for a year. Councillor Rumbles.
Yes, for those of us who are new, can you give me a few examples of capital grants that have been granted in the past, just so that I have an idea of what it is that we're looking at here?
If the treasurer could comment on that, I believe that would be grants as to Blue Water Health or
it definitely. There's a Children's Safety Village. There's all sorts of grants that have come out in the past that we've basically given grants for. There's about $3.5 million worth of county grants that are given out per year. It was part of the 2021 budget. You get some of them are very, very small and so forth, but Petrolia, Inniskill, and Commons Association, these would all continue, but we're talking about new ones, right? So any new capital grant requests that come in.
Councillor Bradley, and then Councillor Loosley.
Now I'm getting confused because I understood those grants you just mentioned were operating grants that come out. The grants that we have to answer the mayor's question, this council gave, I think, over 10 years to Strathroy Hospital, and a number of other, Lambton College in the past. That's where I thought this was directed at, not those small-time grants that are in the budget to give to local fairs and festivals and those things. I thought we just left them alone. They weren't. So if I got them too mixed up, we're talking
Through Warren Weaver, Councillor Bradley is absolutely correct. Those would be left alone. We're talking about the major capital grants, whether it's the Strathroy, initiatives that hospital initiatives that have come forward in the past. But the small ones aren't really, capital in nature. They're small. So I apologize for any confusion that was out there. But it's the big pieces that come forward every so often.
Councillor Leslie.
Yeah, thank you, Warden Weaver. I too just want to be clear on if there was a tabled motion to bring this back forward to council budget sessions, will that still automatically happen? Because I feel it should.
So you were talking of the tabled motion from last year's budget discussion that we deferred it to the next year. That's the capital program for the Petrolia Playhouse. Is that?
Oh, I'm talking about the hospital proposal that was tabled, I believe, from last year's budget for 1 year. And I think hospitals are more important than ever before at this present time. And I just want to make sure that that discussion will still happen at budget time.
We definitely can make it happen if you want to proceed in that direction, follow the county direction that was given out in at the onset of 2020 budget. But again, just early notice as to the significant cost pressures that could be in our essential service areas and the unknowns that could potentially happen in whether it's wave 2 or wave 3 COVID. We know how much dire straits municipalities are across all of Ontario, and it's just trying to prioritize the services that the county council wants.
Follow up, Councillor Leslie.
Yeah, thank you, Warden Weaver. I think my point is if it was a tabled motion, it will automatically come back at budget session. Is that not correct?
Mr. Tufo.
Yes, good question. We're going to take a look at the minutes, but if it was tabled, it's tabled, so it'll move forward on a tabling basis. I don't recall necessarily that it was tabled for the next budget. If I recall correctly, and I may be mistaken, it was I think Blue Water Health was informed to come back around in a year with additional information, better preparation for its ask. But again, we'll take a look at the minutes to ensure that we have the correct sort of status of that resolution. If it's tabled, it's tabled. It'll come back around automatically, and then we'll move forward. But if you wish, to the extent that I can help with the log jam, in terms of the resolution or the recommendation before you, it could always be and would be subject to any exceptions, including any previously tabled matters concerning new capital grants.
Follow up again, Councillor Leslie, and then Councillor Bradley.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bradley.
The reason I raise that issue because I think I agree with the tough love. I think we send that message this year. But I do recall our discussion. It was really, I don't think it's fair to Blue Water Health. Sarnia location and the Petrolia location were told to come back and to work with the staff to, and in my view, to scope down their proposal because it was way too much when we looked at it last year. So I felt sort of morally bound that we at least need to finish that discussion, as Mayor Leslie has said. As to the others, I can certainly support that we pass the motion today, that the capital grant requests, there will be none taken this coming year.
Okay, so we'll get clarification on that motion or that tabling or where that stands with Blue Water Health. The recommendation is there that no new capital grant requests, so that will be, do we want to, there's no change to that recommendation. I believe I have a mover and a seconder for that. All in favor of that recommendation? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Item B, regarding court service temporary relocation. And there is a report as well with a motion at the bottom. bottom, recommending that negotiating a lease agreement with Research Park for a 12-month term with the option of extending it. And staff report back on a negotiated agreement for council's final approval. Moved by Mayor Arnold, Councillor Arnold, seconded by Councillor Ferguson. Are there questions regarding that? Councillor White.
Thank you, Warden Weber. Just a question in regards to accessibility for clients, I guess, for lack of a better word. Has the county had discussions with the city of Sarnia in regards to ensuring there is adequate transit? I know there is transit, but I'm concerned about whether or not, and it may be adequate, I'm just concerned about whether or not that was taken into account, and whether or not there's adequate transit.
I believe that has been looked into as someone that willing to comment on that.
Just really quickly, we did take a look at the whole transportation service to the facility, and there is transit service to the research park. Accessibility is always one of our top priorities as well. We're doing the best that we can do in order to make sure that the public service is still delivered.
Follow up.
Thank you. So just in regards to that, given that transit schedules are what they are and they're fixed, I'm specifically speaking about bus service. And given that it is COVID times, do we have adequate space for people to wait outside of the elements, either before or after any scheduled appointments at this location?
Again, through you, we're taking a look at preliminary planning steps to be taken. The comments that Councillor White commented on is definitely part of our planning process as far as ensuring there's adequate physical distancing and so forth. There's been a lot of work that's been done so far to get to where we're at. So I just want to reassure the councillor that we're looking at that.
Okay, thank you. As we get reports back to council, I'm sure those concerns will be addressed and looked at in the report coming back. Councillor Cook.
Yes, thank you. Through to our treasurer. The cost to relocate out to the Western Research Park, has that already been taken into consideration? I see in the report that we had costs to renovate the Bayside Centre. Are those costs also going to be used to move us out to the Western Research Park?
Yes, we definitely have a funding source for it. It was all part of the planning process. But we are, again, we're trying to minimize our costs of renovation, leasehold improvement in that area, noting that if anything that we do, this is a temporary period, could benefit the park for any future tenants in the future.
Okay, any further questions? All in favor of the recommendation? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Item C, Municipal Capital Facility Agreement Report. And there is a recommendation that the Bayside Centre located in Sarnia has designated as a municipal capital facility. Staff prepare, present council with draft bylaw designating the space as municipal capital facility. Moved by Councillor Bradley, seconded by Councillor White. Any questions regarding this recommendation? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Item 14, committee minutes of the AM committee. Chair Councillor White.
Thank you, Warden Weaver. It's my privilege to present the minutes of the committee AM meeting from September 16th for County Council's consideration.
Thank you. Infrastructure Development Services, item 1 is information reports. Item 2 regarding snow equipment purchasing strategy. Public Health Services, item 3 is correspondence. Item 4 is information reports. Item 5 regarding school-focused nurses. Cultural Services Division, item 6, correspondence. Corporate Services Division, item 7, information report. And item 8 regarding the warden and deputy warden's election. Item 9 regarding the warden's election as amended. And item 10, motion to adjourn. Chair White.
Thank you, Warden Weber. I move that County Council accept the minutes as presented from the committee AM meeting of September 16th, 2020.
Seconder for that, Councillor Bird. Are there any questions on any of that? All in favor with that motion? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to item B, which is the PM committee minutes. Chair Rombo.
Thank you, Warden Weber. I present the committee PM minutes of September 16th, 2020 for council's consideration.
Okay, long-term care division, item number 1, information reports. Corporate services division, item 2, information reports. Item 3 regarding the warden and deputy warden election. Finance, facilities, and court services, item 4, information report. And item 5 regarding 2020 budget impacts. Item 6 regarding news release of those impacts. Item social services division, item number 7, information reports. Item 8 is adjournment. Chair Rumboats.
Thank you, Warden Weber. I move that the County Council accepts the committee minutes of September 16th, 2020.
Seconded by Councillor Napper. Any questions? All in favor of those minutes? That is carried. Thank you. We have items tabled from a previous meeting on the September 2nd. There was a motion tabled regarding the resuming of committee AM and PM committee meetings in person. Councillor Bradley.
So I'm going to move that we retable this till January. And we continue to meet by Zoom till January. And then review.
Continue meetings by Zoom till January. Councillor Stark, are you seconding that? You're on mute.
I have a question for the clerk as it relates to the allowability of that.
Okay.
Well, can we?
I'll get a seconder first. Could I get, okay, Councillor Broad is seconding that. Councillor Loosely, I seen your hand up for a question, but I will go with Councillor Stark's questions to Mr. Tiffo.
It would be permitted if County Council wishes to continue meeting online through Zoom right through January. And the reasons for that is at our last meeting, we did amend our rules of procedure, or your rules of procedure, to allow for the continuation of these meetings at your will and option. So yes, it would be permitted.
Okay. Councillor Loosely?
Mr. Warden, this is, sorry, with all respect, this is not debatable. It's a tabling motion.
Okay, so there is a motion that it be tabled till January. Councillor Stark, I guess it's not debatable, but Councillor Stark
Is requesting a recorded vote.
Okay.
All right, so the motion to table the current item that was tabled to today's meeting to January is on the floor. However, I just pulled the name, the warden's name to start this out, and I'll leave it to council how it wishes to proceed on this, because typically we don't have our chair start out.
Go ahead. I'll vote no.
All right. So that's a no. Councillor White.
No.
That's a no. Councillor Arnold.
No.
No. Councillor Bird.
No.
That's a no. Councillor Bushy.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Bradley.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Broad.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Cook.
No.
That's a no. Councillor Ferguson.
No.
That's a no. Councillor Hand. You're on mute again.
No.
That's a no.
And whoever swore, thank you.
Councillor Loosely.
Yes.
That's a yes. Deputy Warden Marriott.
No.
That's a no.
No.
Councillor Miller. Councillor Miller, did I hear no?
Yeah. It's a no.
That's a no. Councillor Napper.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Rombouts.
No.
That's a no. Councillor Stark.
No.
That's a no. So the motion fails.
Sir Bradley's,
I have a follow-up question. How are you going to protect our public health? Bringing in people from across the county into that chamber, and at what cost? It's a reasonable question to ask. What cost, and how are you going to protect our public health in that room and the staff's public health?
just, I think on procedures, and I'll ask Mr. Tifo to comment, but the motion was asked to be retabled. Does that mean it's lifted off the table now for discussion because that motion didn't carry? Or do we need a motion to raise it from the table for discussion?
I think it'd be best if you get the motion to lift it from the table, and then we'll have that. That's an appropriate question.
Moved by Councillor Stark, seconded by Councillor Rombouts to lift this motion from the table. Any questions? All in favor of that motion? That is carried. Thank you. So the motion is regarding the AM committee, and it was in the report from our last the meeting. It was, the recommendation was that meetings be held, committee meetings only, not council meetings, but committee meetings be held in the council chambers. And the report speaks to the numbers that would be allowed in the room with separation, as well as wearing a mask while you went to your seat, but and you're in your seat similar to a restaurant. You remove your mask for the meeting, would be an in-person meeting for the committee meetings. So that motion has been raised and that is on the floor. I understand we do need a mover and a seconder for that. Am I correct, Mr. Tifo?
Yes, to deal with the substance of the report.
Yes, so the starting September 16th would be changed to the next committee meeting, which will be, not sure the date, Councillor Cook? You're moving the recommendation with that date change? Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Stark? Further questions? Councillor White?
Yes, I believe the report outlined some safety measures that I'm comfortable with, and given the nature of mask use and space in there, I'm reasonably confident that we can continue to do our business in person in that space. However, to Councillor Bradley's point, perhaps some clarification from staff as to, once again, and for the public interest, what that would look like, what protocols would be in place. If we could have a comment, please.
Yes, good question. As the report indicates, the room would be limited to 32 attendees in total, which includes committee members and staff. Of course, committee members would all be in attendance, and there would be 8 of you. And in addition to that, we would control the number of staff to only those who are absolutely necessary for the discussion that is on the table during the committee meeting. In terms of entering the facilities, there would be a screening process at the front door. Individuals would be effectively escorted into the chambers. That includes committee members and members of the public. Members of the public would be seated at designated physically distanced areas within the publicly accessible area of the chamber. And now with the new Ontario rules, the order that came out last Friday, but we only saw the rules on Wednesday, members of the public would be asked to, would be required to be masked or face covered at all times, whereas committee members could choose whether or not they wish to do so, but they will be physically distanced, and same with staff. And of course, we would maintain a list of contact individuals who have attended the site for contact tracing purposes. We do have regular cleaning of these facilities, that is sanitization of the facilities, and of course there'd be sanitizing hand sanitizer, I should say, materials there for those attending the session. So that's my answer to that. And despite what may take place today in terms of the vote, should provincial regulations change and the orders change, that would require us to amend our practice and our direction here, then that would necessarily have to take place. But as it's currently drafted, it's compliant with the current rules. We'll take health and safety into consideration. The next step, if we're granted the direction to go down this path, we will issue written protocols to all members so that you're fully aware of what will happen come the day of attendance, which is October 21st. And then we'll continue to monitor the situation with appropriate cleaning and physical distancing in place.
Councillor Stark.
Yes, could I ask a question relative to the replacement members? Are they available in the event that a particular individual does not feel comfortable? Can they assign a replacement member in their place at the committee level?
I would, Mr. Tufo.
No, good question. Ultimately, given that it's a, I guess in my mind, but really subject to council's direction, they could participate, given that it's an advisory committee at the end of the day, and final decisions on the advisory committee's work is really rendered by council, and where your alternate members are permitted to attend council. So my suggestion, that would be that, yes, your alternate members could attend, much like any other member, and subject to county council reviewing the work of the committee. And of course, your alternate members can participate at county council as well.
Councillor Boucher?
I have someone could answer me this question. We're going to continue meeting here the same way as a council. So what's your rush to go on the committee and change it? What is the rush? Why are we moving? Could someone tell me the reason why?
I'm assuming that's a question to me. If it is, I'm in no rush. Ultimately, my job is to put the issue on the table for county council to decide.
But go ahead. Thank you.
Councillor Loosley?
Thank you, Warden Weber. I don't feel comfortable. I will not support this. I think it's just too early under the circumstances with everything changing within the province. I think we should wait. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Rombout.
My children have been going to school now for over a month, and they wear masks. And since masks stop this virus, it should be no problem for us to meet in person. That's my opinion.
Okay. Any other comments? Mayor Napper, Councilor Napper.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. Do we have the option of still Zooming if we want to? We don't feel comfortable going there. Like some of us are high risk. We may not be out of our bubble going there. Do we have that option of Zooming?
Mr. Tufo, I believe we did pass a resolution that our meetings are either in person or by Zoom. I don't think the hybrid approach was approved at our meetings. Could you clarify, please?
That's correct. It's either an electronic meeting, all in, or in-person meeting. Councillor Napper does obviously raise a valid consideration for your consideration today in terms of the directions you wish to move forward. I've had a discussion. I have to put this on the floor. I've had a discussion, of course, with our team here, and really in response to Councillor Bouchy's question whether or not we were rushed. We're not rushed. We're not necessarily saying that this is where we want to go. What we're suggesting is that this is County Council's decision, and hence why it's now on your plate. But Councillor Napper's factors are relevant considerations.
I believe I've seen Councillor Bradley's hand up again.
Well, see, I think there's a serious question there when you have a member of County Council saying that they're at high risk. And just like people can make decisions whether they want to wear a mask or they believe that they have a medical issue, I just think it's premature, and that's why I thought we should wait till next year and then make a decision based on where we're at on the case count. And even here today, we're all applauding because we went to 0. Then we find out we have a COVID case in ICU at Blue Water Health. And I think the one thing that is being ignored is that you also have the staff component that don't have any choice, that have to come into work. I presume, Mr. Tivo, the staff will have to be at their workplace. And I had one other question. Is the county buildings open at this point?
Sorry?
Is the county buildings actually open at this point for the public?
By appointment?
That's correct. We did open on Monday. It's restricted access only. Our access is restricted to the lobby area that you're all familiar with, and the committee rooms 1 and 2. And of course, if we use council chamber for public purposes, then that is available as well. All working wings of the building are not open to the public.
I probably didn't make it clear. The aspect of staff, if staff do not wish to attend the meeting because of their risk factors, do they have the right to do that without any concern?
If there were issues communicated to us by staff who would otherwise be part of a meeting or required in a meeting that required, due to a disability that required accommodation, then we would be obliged to review the accommodations that are required and assess that on a case-by-case basis. So the best response is that, but the most direct response I can provide is that I couldn't tell you today that we could force a member of the staff who has a bona fide disability to attend an in-person meeting if attending the in-person meeting could reasonably have an impact on their health or safety given their underlying disability. That would be assessed on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Napper.
And just for clarification, Mr. Warden, so if I don't feel comfortable coming, the only option I got is to send my alder, the deputy mayor, to county council if I want representation from Wyoming. Is that correct? Am I hearing that right?
I believe that is correct. Councillor Bradley?
I need to just clarify this. I thought the committee or the appointment that Mayor Napper was talking about, the substitutes only applied to the county council meetings themselves. I didn't realize it applied to the committees too.
Mr. Tifo, can you clarify that?
Yes, correct. So the statute, the Municipal Act does speak about having an alternate member attend county council. But given that the committee meetings functionally serve as an advisory to county council and is really not binding on county council, then I think assuming sort of the intent and spirit of that legislation, I don't think there'd be much objection to their participation at committee level. If I recall correctly, and I may be mistaken, but I do believe one of your alternate members has participated in one of our committee sessions.
I do know one of ours was at, Councillor Dennis was at it in camera. I don't recall him attending. I just want to make this clear. So if someone wants to substitute, I think it would be a lot easier just to say if someone wants to zoom in because of medical concerns, that they can still do so for a period of time, not to make this endless there. I think there's practical solutions here that can address the concerns that are serious concerns being raised.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councillor Rombaut.
I just wanted to, and I know Dr. Renade is no longer on the call, but it's my understanding that your bubble, your personal bubble, is the people that you're close with. So the people that you hug and that you are around without wearing a mask, that you're very comfortable with. Is that not correct? And if so, like, we're not asking for anyone to go outside of their personal bubble. We're not asking anybody to go close to each other within the 2 meter distance. We're not asking anyone to take off their masks if they're not comfortable. I just want that clarified, because there's a difference between going out to the grocery store, and I don't consider the people I see in the grocery store as part of my bubble.
I believe you're correct. This is not close contact with anyone. The bubble is people that you're in close contact with. What this recommendation or what this motion is that we meet with social distancing, with masking in place, and proper sanitization. So I think that was the intent, that there is room in the building for committee, but it's not a close contact situation. I have Councillor Hand and Councillor Arnold. Councillor Hand, go ahead.
Given that this question has come up around, could we revisit the idea of a hybrid? Whereas if you are uncomfortable to attend in person because of your own physical condition, that you would be able to zoom in. Is that still a possibility to revisit that before we make a decision?
How does that work with our live streaming? I don't know who would answer that. I guess if we did amend it to allow individuals for Zooming, that would be basically a reconsideration of our previous motion that there would be no hybrid. Is there any information on whether one person or two people could Zoom in if the others met in, how that would work through the IT process of it all for the live stream?
Yes, a good question. With respect to the committee meetings, we certainly turned our minds to that as a potential option. Is it a potential option from a technology perspective? It is, but it wouldn't necessarily be ideal, given the fact that the cameras that are being used in the committee rooms would effectively give that individual perhaps the view of the room itself. But there wouldn't necessarily be full streaming, so to speak, for that individual. It would be essentially that individual almost like on a, for lack of a better word, participating on a FaceTime. If those of you are aware of FaceTime, it'd be the same type of technology. They'd only have access really to the room. We would have access maybe to that individual. In terms of procedure, your rules of procedure are as stated earlier, which is all or nothing in terms of electronic participation or in person. That's been this council's consistent direction since 2017 when we looked at amendments under Bill 68 at that point in time. If, however, council wished to amend that for committee purposes, The true process would be to go back, look at the rules, have the rules amended, and come back at a different council meeting for to amend the rules of procedure. Less so in terms of an argument, but could you technically say today, as part of a resolution, that despite the rules, effective whatever the next meeting of committee, you'll participate, you'll permit committee members to participate electronically to the extent possible. That's something that could be done. We can take a look at it, but I have to say that we've looked at that and it would not be ideal.
Okay. Councillor Arnold, and then Councillor Romba.
Well, thank you, Warden Weaver, members of the County Council. Out of respect for my good friend, past Deputy Warden Napper, I can't support starting this coming back into the chamber, especially for Lonnie, and I know others have spoken the same, and I know we have other people that are in the vulnerable group as well, myself included. So I can't support moving back in the chamber at this time.
Okay. Councillor Romba.
While I don't agree with the decision, I wouldn't support it in the fact that I want everyone on this council to feel like their voice is heard throughout the committee meetings, and I would hate to see people not be able to participate based on that. So,
Councillor White, Councillor Bradley.
Thank you. And again, as I said before, I'm certainly confident in the way staff has presented this and the ability to keep everyone safe. And I would be comfortable attending in person. However, it would never be my intention to isolate anybody and make them feel like we were working against them or attempting to put them at risk. And I know that that wouldn't be the perception anyway, that we're intentionally putting somebody at risk. But in solidarity with Councillor Napper and his concerns, I will vote against the motion.
Councillor Bradley.
Well, Mr. Warden, I'm going to ask for your wisdom because we voted not to table this till January. And then the impression I had was we were then going to go ahead and meet in person. That was the direction. And now I'm hearing, and I think they're very valid concerns being raised. So where are we actually at on what we're going to vote on in the next few seconds?
If this, my understanding, if we defeat this motion, we continue to meet by Zoom.
Okay, all right. That's all I think we needed to know. Thank you.
I don't believe there's any other motion required. We've had a full discussion on this, how we could do this and why we couldn't do this and why some are not comfortable doing this. So if this gets defeated, we continue on Zoom meetings until further motion comes back, lifting that, or we proceed. So I seen Councillor Rumbouts, then Councillor Loosely.
yeah, I think you just answered my question. I just was wondering how long, or if this was going into perpetuity, or if it was something that we were going to look at down the line.
Okay, so we'll vote on this motion, and then I believe there is another item that will need to be discussed, and that is whether we are going to, with the warden's election, have it off-site at a larger facility, or whether it be done electronically as well. And I seen Councillor Stark's hand up. So.
Yeah, in the interest of solidarity, I will withdraw my seconding.
Withdraw your seconding of the motion.
That's correct.
If I can help.
In other words, it's still on the table.
The motion on the table was moved by Councillor Cook, seconded by Councillor Stark. Am I correct in that? That we changed the date in this, and so.
So by me withdrawing my seconding, it essentially allows the conversation to continue, such as to include a hybrid version. And that will be my motion.
Point of order, can we continue without a seconder discussing the?
No, we'd have to get another seconder for the motion, and then either pass or delete it or defeat it. Councillor Ferguson, I see your hand.
I would second the motion to keep this on the table.
Okay. So the motion is on the table. Councillor Stark?
So I would move that we allow a hybrid version of the meeting to proceed such that anyone who is uncomfortable can access the Zoom meetings that we currently are using, while others who are comfortable can appear in person.
That would have to be an amendment to the motion. And you move that amendment to this motion?
That's correct.
Is there a seconder for that amendment? And I'm seeing none.
Mr. Arnold.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see your hand down there. My apologies. So the amendment has been moved. That will allow a hybrid meeting, I guess is what we would call this, going forward for those that are comfortable. Councillor Bradley.
Simplest solution, and the motion I moved to January failed, accept that. The simplest solution, not complicate things, not put the staff and everyone else through all these gymnastics and expense, is to simply continue the Zoom. And if you want me to make it, table it to January the 1st or December the 1st, I will do that. I just think it's simplistic to do it that way without all the other things you're gonna have to try to figure out, and the technology and all those things. So, you know, so the motion, I think, to understand Councillor Stark, is to when? The question that's on the floor.
There is no time frame. It's a open-ended motion that allows people who want to meet by Zoom versus people who want to meet in person. Very similar to what we do at Sarnia City Council.
And then I'm going to move a motion to table this to December 15th, which would take it to January the 1st, and then we'll make a decision if anyone's interested in supporting that.
Okay, so we have we have a motion, we have an amendment to the motion, and we have a tabling motion. Is there a seconder for the tabling motion?
I have a question.
Tabling motion needs to be seconded before we can have any, and then we can't have any questions. I'd really rather deal with the amendment questions prior to having the tabling motion, but I guess then we go back to our procedure bylaw that since 2017, I understand we have not had hybrid meetings. So I don't have a seconder for the tabling motion yet, so I will call on Councillor Hand to get clarification.
This is getting really confusing, and there's a lot of gymnastics. Wouldn't we deal with this motion? If it's defeated, then come up with the alternative plan?
If I can be assistance, it is compounding, and the amendments are in substance changing the original motion. I would agree with dealing with the original motion, and if the recommendation that's in the report fails, under your rules of procedure, you continue to meet by Zoom until such time as the warden declares otherwise. And I would imagine that the warden would declare otherwise once he, in this case he, is consulted by members of council to get this thing moving in a different direction. So I would agree that if you dealt with the first motion, which is a recommendation on the table that you've debated quite some time, then the natural fallback under your rules of procedure is that the Zoom meetings, the electronic meetings, continue until such time as the warden declares otherwise. If you wish to deal with the warden's sort of discretion in that regard today with a different motion, i.e. to have a hybrid committee type of meeting, then we could deal with that, but in a separate motion, so to avoid confusion here.
On a point of order, I moved a motion to table, not debatable. Councillor Loosely repeatedly put his hand up to second that.
Okay, so it has been moved and seconded to table. All in favor?
Maybe record the vote, Warden, just for your own sake and for our sake.
Sorry?
Record the vote, Warden, for your own sake and our sake.
Recorded vote on the tabling motion.
Sorry, I'm still confused on why we're not completing what we're doing.
Because there's a motion to table.
But that came up after this discussion. I'm confused on the order.
We have a motion, and we have an amendment to that motion, and we have a tabling motion. And it's the tabling motion, I guess, takes precedent. It's been moved and seconded by Councillor Loosely. So we're going to push this down the road if this motion passes to table. I would call on Mr. Tufo to call a vote.
Which motion are we tabling? Just so I'm aware.
Everything till January.
Thank you.
Why
We
January?
meet by Zoom until January if this passes, if the tabling motion passes.
Well,
Councillor Stark.
the tabling motion did not have a time frame.
I said to mid-December, which effectively makes it January, since we don't meet in December.
So,
Okay.
so the warden's election will not be in person.
No. I think that clears that up. It'll be a vote, a Zoom meeting with electronic voting. If this motion passes to table, I would ask Mr. Tufo to read call the vote.
Thank you very much. We are starting with Councillor Hand. Councillor Hand.
You're on mute.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor
Yes.
Loosely.
Yes.
That's a yes. Deputy Warden Marriott.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Miller.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Napper.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Rombouts.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Stark.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor White.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Arnold.
Sure.
That's a yes. Councillor Bird.
No.
That's a no. Councillor Bushy.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Bradley.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Broad.
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Cook.
No.
That's a no. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes.
That's a yes. And Warden Weaver.
No.
That's a no. The motion carries.
Motion is carried. I see no notices of motion. Other business, there's our bylaws. Any other business before we go to bylaws? Councillor Bradley.
Just one, and it's an issue that's, I did inform Mr. Van Horn. I've had one issue, one person and some other people raised concerns about the number of ambulances from EMS in the city at a given time and the response times. I'm not looking for an elaborate report. You did address the one situation on the timing, but I think it would be good to know the level of service in the city as it relates to EMS. And again, I'm not looking for a lot of time and expense. Just give us a one-pager on what that level of service is, as best as can be determined, and report back to County Council.
Okay. I'm looking for a short report. Councillor Stark.
Do we need a motion to make that happen, or?
I don't believe so. I think those reports have been in our committee reports as we've gone through, and we get reports on response times regularly. But we'll get those reports out again.
Okay. I have one issue.
My motion's a bit different. I'm not looking just response times. I'm looking for the level of service as it relates to time, days of the week, and things like that. I don't think we cover that all off in those reports.
All right, we'll get clarification on what
I'm not making this difficult. Whatever you can come back to, and so there can be a response to the people that are inquiring.
Okay.
Wherever you do it.
Councillor Stark.
If we're done with that topic, I would like to announce that I will be putting my name forward for the position of Deputy Warden as per the precedent that was set at the last meeting. I hopefully will receive your support for that, and I appreciate the consideration. I will follow up with emails to that effect, including my qualifications to be able to assume that role. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Warden Weaver. Through the chair to staff, I have been made aware of a rather concerning situation around Sarnia regarding the county's program for the homeless. I've been led to understand that homeless individuals are being placed in the back section of the original Holiday Inn, but just recently I've heard that about 4 homeless individuals per day are being moved out of that location to the shelter and then moved again from the shelter to one of the hotels on the Golden Mile. If this information is accurate, then this is a lot of shuffling around and would be very unsettling for these individuals. And when many of them are dealing with serious addictions and mental health issues, they need some permanence and stability in their lives in order to be able to deal with these issues. The constant shuffling will be detrimental to them all. So perhaps staff could please explain to us what is happening, and also what type of funding model is allowing for this broken and constantly changing process to accommodate the homeless.
Okay, I'm not sure that this is an agenda item.
No, this is any other business, Warden.
And other businesses to be congratulatory or that type of thing, not necessarily that type of. So I would ask Stefan if this is something that is regarded under other business.
No, it's a good question. It's a substantive issue. So I think if Councillor Bird is looking for an answer to those issues, the answer can be sought by council today, much like Councillor Bradley sought a report on the EMS and level of service within the city of Sarnia, which will come back. And the reason for having agenda items and or notices of motion or whatever it may be is so that staff can come prepared to give you actual facts and analysis of the question that may be at hand. So I would suggest that this is a substantive matter, that if a response is sought, that it be sought in the form of a report.
And thank you for that. If just add, this is a very concerning issue, of course, and it was in the paper yesterday in Sarnia Lambton this week. And they said in that article that the county has formed a new homeless prevention team, and I would also like in that report then who are the members on this team. But this is a really critical situation as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure we'll get some follow-up on that and report back with that as well.
Thank
you. Councillor Loosley.
Yeah, thank you, Warden Weaver. I just wanted to follow up. I see here on November the 17th or 27th, 2019, it was moved by Mayor Bradley and seconded by Councillor Stark, that County Council invite the 2 local conservation authorities to a community meeting hosted by the county early in the new year to discuss their core mandates. And all lower tier municipalities council members will be invited to that meeting. I just wondered if we could still maybe arrange for that with Zoom, Warden Weaver, because it's been a year.
Okay, I will follow up with staff and see where that recommendation follows and whether it can be done through Zoom. If I believe there was some conversations with the Conservation Authority and whether it was a county or a local function. So we will I'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
Any other business? Councillor Rod.
Thanks, Warden Weaver. I just have an announcement I'd like to make today, and maybe with Lisa's help, she can help me out here. Lisa, can you put that up for me? Thank you. On November 7th, people across Lambton County are being asked to reach out and help their neighbors. A volunteer committee from across Lambton County is organizing Neighbor to Neighbor, Lambton County's biggest rural food drive. The concept is simple. We're asking people across Lambton to help people struggling to put food on the table during the COVID-19 pandemic. We're asking people to place canned or non-perishable food items on their porch or at the end of the driveway, weather dependent, on Saturday, November 7th by noon. Then a group of community volunteers led by a community coordinator in the area will fan out in neighborhoods to pick up the donations following all the health protocols recommended by Lambton Public Health. It doesn't matter how big or small the donation is, we hope our neighbors will help out their neighbors. The pandemic style food drive was first done in Chatham, Kent. The May 16th miracle was an overwhelming success with over 680,000 pounds of food collected. Not only did the food drive feed people in need, it launched a whole raft of new food security programs. And it built community pride, an added bonus in a time when people were alone. Essex County followed Chatham Kent's lead and brought in more than 900,000 pounds of food. Who knows what Lambton can do? We all know that Lambton County is made up of many caring and generous communities. I think we all have food banks in Lambton County that have opened their doors to more people since the pandemic began. Donations aren't quite as plentiful this year because many churches and community groups simply aren't meeting because of COVID-19. We're encouraging everyone to think about how they can contribute to this food drive. Aside from donating a can or two, we need families to be part of the crew picking up donations. In more rural areas, we need people to volunteer to host a rural drop-off point. If your business has some extra warehouse space or a municipality with some extra space, please step forward. We may need a warm place to store some food. If you would like to volunteer your time, you can sign up at our website, www.n2nfooddrive.com, or call one of our volunteer coordinators. Leading up to November 7th Food Drive, we will be sharing information about what is needed, how you can give a monetary donation, and we'll have community challenges as well. I'm hoping I can count on the support of my fellow county councilors to talk about it and to volunteer for the Neighbor to Neighbor Food Drive and share our information on your municipality's social media and website. Our volunteers recognize that many urban centers have already had numerous food drives throughout the year, and for that reason, we are putting an emphasis on rural, where organized food drives have been somewhat limited. We want to thank all those volunteers for their hard work and dedication and hope they will join in. In closing, we know that there are people in the communities that have lost their jobs or who are not working as many hours and they need our help. This is a very simple and effective way to support our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Broad. I believe the support will grow across the community, and we'll get look forward to more details and everything going forward. So
just a little follow-up on that, Bill. There will be a news release happening here immediately, and I'll make sure that all the county councilors do receive it. There will be a social media blitz happening at noon today, which is here in a few minutes. All volunteer coordinators and their info is going to be on the website, and volunteer forms also on the website, or call the coordinator. So thank you.
Great initiative. I'm sure it'll be very successful. I've seen some hand clappings and some hearts going up on the screen. So with that, thank you for that. Any other business? Seeing none, bylaws, notice of bylaws, bylaw 29 and bylaw 30. Mr. Defoe.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor White and seconded by Councillor Rombauts that bylaws 29 and 30 of 2020 as circulated be taken as read a first and second time.
Any questions? All in favor of those first and second readings? That's carried. Thank you.
And it's moved by Councillor Rombauts and seconded by Councillor White that bylaws 29 and 30 of 2020 as circulated be taken as read a third and final time.
Questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to adjournment. County Council, our next regular County Council will be held on Wednesday, November the 4th, 9 a.m. Mover and a seconder for adjournment, Councillor Loosley and Councillor Rumbout. Before we vote on that, just like to remind everyone that COVID is not away and that we need to maintain our social distancing, our wearing masks, washing our hands. We're doing a good job here in Lambton, but we need to continue and be vigilant so we don't end up like some other areas in the province. So with that, all in favor of adjourning? That is carried. And thank you. We'll see you at committee meetings on at our next committee meeting. Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Have a good day. Happy Thanksgiving.